For 2015, the midsize truck market is heating up. Chevrolet returned after a brief absence with an all-new Colorado. We wanted to test this new truck against the class mainstays in the Nissan Frontier and the Toyota Tacoma. We're going to be putting these three trucks through their paces both on and off-road to see which is the best midsize truck of 2015. Chevy redesigned an all-new Colorado for its re-entry back into the midsize truck market for 2015, and therefore it's ultimately what prompted this test. The Colorado comes to the class with its chest puffed out and its head held high, with its class-leading horsepower thanks to its 3.6-liter V6. What's more, the Colorado's motor leads the segment in performance and also at the pump with the best fuel economy in the class. Even Chevrolet would agree that its last go-around of the Colorado wasn't a raging success, so they went back and built a new truck with the intention of taking control of the class, and that means improved refinement in the cabin, a modern touchscreen center stack, and ergonomically friendly instrumentation, and great all-around handling on and off the highway. In spite of the long 10-year lifespan of the second-generation Tacoma, Toyota has enjoyed a long run at the top of the midsize truck market. The Tacoma is yet to be knocked off the top of the leaderboard since the second gen was introduced back in 2005. Available in a 5-speed automatic or 6-speed manual trans, the Tacoma's 4.0-liter V6 motor may produce the lowest horsepower and torque of the bunch, but it carries with it high level of consumer confidence for reliability. For our test, we looked to acquire a 4x4 version of the TRD off-road package and not the more off-road equipped TRD Pro, just to keep a level playing field. Toyota offered up its 2014 Baja TX package, which is essentially the previous version of the TRD Pro before it existed. So with increased suspension travel, race-inspired Bilstein shocks, TRD wheels with BF Goodrich TA-KO tires, we expect this truck to do quite well in the dirt, but we wonder how it'll stack up in every other category. Although the Frontier has been losing the war to Tacoma in the lonely mid-size truck market, the Nissan still is a capable vehicle and one that focuses on providing great value. Our 4x4 Pro 4X test truck is the only one in the class to feature a sunroof, dual climate control in the cabin, rear backup sensors, which can easily be turned off, and a roof rack for added storage up top. That said, the second-gen Frontier is a bit long in the tooth, much like the Tacoma, first being introduced in 2005 and only receiving a minor facelift in 2009. The Frontier's 4.0-liter V6 produces a class-leading 281 pound-feet of torque and a mid-pack 261 on the horsepower front, but its combined 17 miles per gallon is the lowest EPA fuel economy rating of the bunch. So we're here just outside of Barstow, California. Been working on our mid-size shootout here with the Colorado, Tacoma, and Frontier, and we're missing one of our testers. Sean, where is that other tester?
What's up, boys?
Can you see all right? You okay there? What are you holding?
What's that? Is that a...
I'll bet you're thinking that this is a walking stick, but in actuality it's a, and I'm not blind by the way, it's the leg of a $1,000 tripod that I managed to run over with the Toyota Tacoma today. So, having a great day out here testing these mid-sized trucks.
So there's a reason that this Frontier here is parked backwards and we're using it as a stool. It's because the front's unfortunately got a little problem. Oh. And it's been a good truck all day long, but cosmetically Scott had to punish it.
What did you think about the truck aside from you know, what you did to the front of the Frontier?
You know, front bumper aside, I gotta say that I was expecting. You never want to say, you know, I was going to maybe not like this vehicle or that vehicle. Came into this with a totally open mind, but I did really think that the Nissan was going to lag behind these other two vehicles, and I'm really pleasantly surprised with it. I think Nissan has really put a lot of value into this truck. There are a lot of things on this truck that I like. Dual climate control in the interior, the sunroof, the roof rack. There's a lot of neat things that they add to kind of, I don't want to say mask the performance, but it definitely makes it a much more palatable truck to own when you have all those things going for it. What do you think about how this truck behaves on the road and out here in the off-road environment?
So the Nissan is, it's a pretty interesting proposition off-road. It's got reasonably good body control. It's not sloppy at all, but it's got those flat leather seats in it, so your kind of thing starts to tip over a little bit going down a hill, and next thing you know, you're counting on the seat belt or your left leg to hold you in place. It's an automatic, so it's not such a huge deal, unless you're having to 2-foot it. With the Pro 4X suspension on it, it's not out of sorts trying to cover some ground. I mean, it's certainly not an off-road race truck. So even with the upgraded suspension, you got to go kind of slow. Now, in a regular truck, you'd have to crawl through here. And in these, you can go 15 miles an hour, you know, other than when you get to the whoops or you run out of ground clearance. So it's not bad. It's roughly equal to the Colorado over here. Maybe not as refined. The Toyota's obviously got much more suspension in it because it's got one level up on its off-road package. So it's got a little bit of an unfair advantage out here, and maybe a little bit of an unfair handicap on the street.
Well, the Pro 4X package and the Bilstein shocks that come on the Nissan, they're capable. The problem that you run into with the Nissan is a little bit more ground clearance. You know, you have a decent amount of suspension travel for doing the stuff at slower speed.
The Chevrolet, that was one thing I was really concerned about, guys, was the ground clearance. That, you know, you look at that truck, you look at the way that the spare tire sits even underneath it, and I just kept looking at that thing all day, thinking, we're gonna scrape. And then, as refined as the truck feels on the road, which it feels amazing to me on the road, it's great steering.
Yeah.
You know, the tires are excellent for road use. I was concerned that it was going to be a little bit too street oriented for my taste, and yet it's tackled pretty much everything out here with pretty good composure.
Considering the fact that it does feel more like a sedan or a crossover vehicle on the road now. I mean, much less like a truck. Chevy's done a great job actually with this because it's got the smallest sills, but the mirrors have more angle to them and a little more vertical height to them. So you can actually see around it really well, whereas as you start to close up that glass space, typically you end up with big blind spots.
That's one of the biggest complaints that you hear with customers in the mid-sized truck market is these used to be the $17,000 trucks that you'd go and beat around in the dirt. Now these are $35,000 trucks, and they have some nice capability and some upgraded features on them, but you know, you get a little worried about doing serious off-roading with these things, and the interior having that plastic in there, that was one of the biggest gripes with the Colorado when it came out, was that why did they have this cheap plastic interior? What I think they did a great job with is the refinement of it. They did a great job with the layout, where everything is, easy to find buttons. The ergonomics, I feel, are great.
Looks,
other than the hard plastic.
It looks good. Yeah, even the plastic, the finish on the plastic's okay looking. Mm-hmm. It's just when you touch it or wrap on it, it's tick, tick, tick instead of thump, thump, thump.
One of the things that did bother me about the Toyota so much is for all of its off-road performance, which is really where this truck comes into its own, is when it gets out here and we get to exercise that awesome Bilstein suspension that's on that truck.
Yeah, they're larger Bilstein shocks than what's on the Nissan.
And it feels
really
different.
It can really get through some rough ground at a fair clip. But you know, it comes at the expense of road noise, at the expense of some vague steering with those big BFGs on it. Another thing that I noticed was that it has a tendency to, like, I don't want to say ping, but you hear, you know, the truck, the body a lot, you know, when it's going over rocks and things like that. There's just a lot of noise in that truck, and the aftermarket exhaust isn't helping either.
The aftermarket exhaust I hate on the road and I hate at highway speeds. I actually like it in the dirt. When you first get on the throttle, it feels good and it sounds good. Now, when you're cruising along at 45 miles an hour down the street, it's annoying. When you're at 70 on the freeway, it's just ringing in your ears.
One thing I definitely like about the Tacoma package with regard to the engine performance is when you step on the throttle, where it's making its torque down low like that, it is so responsive and like immediate, and you really, really appreciate that off-road.
No replacement for cubic displacement.
Right.
Yeah.
The other, 4 liter versus, you know,
3.6
in the Colorado. And even this one is it's just in a milder state of tune is what it feels like. It just, you get onto the throttle and it's typical of like V6 automobiles and things like that, where there's a bit of a lag that you feel in the pedal, whereas the hit on the Tacoma is much more instantaneous.
Right, the Nissan has that super aggressive throttle tip in. It's like a smoke and mirror. Of course, after that, you don't get much more throttle. And if at high speed, like on a freeway, you really notice it because you have huge pedal travels to make small speed adjustments when the pedal's already past the first 30% or so of its travel. And the Colorado, I got it in and it was a linear throttle. Give it 10% pedal, you got 10% throttle. And I love that. I mean, that's the way things should be set up. It's accurate. It has, you know, it's like almost like an analog feel. It's way more natural. So that makes this feel a little soft on the bottom because if you just moved your foot in faster and more, you'd be giving the actual input you're giving this. So this takes off and that eases off if you move your foot exactly the same. But we all know on the freeway and stuff, as soon as you get that thing up off of idle, even though it's only a 3.6 liter motor, it's a newer, more modern motor in a higher state of tune, higher specific output, and it's got the most power, it's the quickest truck.
There are areas where the Toyota and the Nissan, you can tell that they're 10 years old.
Right.
And the Chevy with its updated motor, even though it's a little bit smaller, it's 4 liter versus a 3.6 on the Chevy, you definitely notice that there's a higher level of refinement. We were talking about the interior earlier, we were talking about the overall handling. You know, I think one of the things we talked about handling wise that we noticed on road, and that I think you still notice off road as well, you know, the Nissan is a little heavier in the turning. It's a little more laborious kind of to push through the turns. The Toyota's a little bit looser. There's a little bit more play in which isn't bad off-road in some regards,
right.
But the Chevy is the most responsive. It, you know, where you turn it is where
right.
it goes. And it kind of feels the same with the motor as well, that it's just a little more fine-tuned.
Right. Well, it's refined.
Yes.
More than anything, it's mature. It's the next level of refinement on the vehicles. As it sits right now, you're buying a Canyon or a Colorado if you want a modern feeling vehicle that's quiet and doesn't do the tailgate shimmy as you go over rough pavement and stuff like that. I mean, that's got much more torsional rigidity in it, much more chassis rigidity, which makes the whole thing calm down.
We kind of started out this test talking about the mid-size market heating up, you know, and this is kind of the start of it. In 2015, we have the new Colorado that comes, and in 16, we know for certain that the 2.8 liter Duramax is going to be in the Colorado, so that's interesting news. A lot of people are really curious about this diesel motor and how that's going to perform. You know, Toyota, we thought that might be another year away, and we just found out recently, nope, 2016, the new Tacoma's coming. And it's rumored, we don't have anything confirmed yet, but it's rumored that Nissan's going to be working on a new Frontier, and word on the street is that there's going to be a diesel in that as well. So all of a sudden, the mid-size truck market is interesting again. Speaking of these trucks, we got to wrap it up, but it was closer than we thought. We thought it was going to be a wider margin, but these were all great trucks, did really well. We took them on-road, off-road, 0 to 60, curb weight, everything. So for the full results, head over to offroad.com and check out the story.